Welcome into the third hour of Acadiana's Morning News on your Friday.
Yes, it is Friday. For us, it is a payday. It is a beautiful day in this neighborhood. It may be overcast and cloudy outside, but it's certainly a beautiful day for us.
What are we doing?
Well, right now, I don't know. There's some people who question that we don't know what we're doing. In all seriousness, though, part 3 of our conversation with Mike Detillier. The last 2 days we focused on the NFL draft. Part 1, we talked about the Saints and what they would do. Yesterday, we talked about the draft as a whole. Today, though, we pivot. We take a look at the biggest ongoing sports story in the state of Louisiana, and that's the sexual misconduct scandal enveloping Louisiana State University. Mike, Bernie and I touched on it, and it's an issue that doesn't seem like it's going away, and really an issue that's been allowed to fester. So that's what we talk about today in today's edition of the Mike Detillier interview. Of course, the Mike Detillier interview brought to you by our friends over at Café Lola, 1155 Coolidge Boulevard in the Oil Center. If you're looking for a place to go do lunch, go check them out today. You can order online at cafelola.com. You can also order 235-4566 or just stop in and eat. A lot of space. And even though everything's kind of been opened up, they still do socially distance. So they have you taken care of. Café Lola, presenting today's edition of the Mike Detillier interview. The sexual misconduct debacle has been in the news for the last few months. How does that affect recruiting at the university? And to build on that, with the Kim Mulkey hire, how does Kim Mulkey's hire help or hurt LSU in their efforts to maybe reduce some of the penalties that the NCAA might be coming down with?
Well, it'll have nothing to do with the penalties. Absolutely zilch. Man, listen, when the NCAA is doing those investigations, they crawling all over you. So for that standpoint, it does not have any effect. Mulkey's hire affects the women's basketball team because of what she's done in the past. And it's unusual for a coach who's built a dynasty to leave, because normally they feel very comfortable and they're not going anywhere. They've built that sort of machinery in place. So for Kim to come back home in Louisiana, there had to be a lot there for not only financially but structurally. And I think that was part of the negotiations part, as far as assistant coaches, as far as structure, staff, everything else. And Kim is given that leeway because, of her track record at Baylor. And, man, she's a terrific coach, great recruiter, knows the area extremely well. I thought Nikki was a good coach. The difficulties were with her was Nikki had trouble sealing the deal at the end, and a lot of really good players were leaving the state of Louisiana. So it's an interesting hire. It's a big-time hire to get Kim Mulkey to come to Baton Rouge to coach. The stuff that was covered up and all, I mean, it's sort of a disgusting thing that you would have people in that type of position that would have protected a coach and protecting players to this element. And you understand the fact that, okay, you can't let a head coach have final say on discipline on a player. He's brought in to be the coach. He's not brought in to be the disciplinarian. That has to be taken out of his hands and given to someone independent of it, but understanding the cause and effect of what's happened. And it's a structural issue top to bottom. It's just not Les Miles being a creepy old man, because his deals got covered up by other people. And so, listen, it's a mess. I've seen it in other schools similar. I didn't know anything about Les. And I had a family member that worked there for over 4 years. Never saw it. And so they did a good job covering all that up, that entire time frame when he was there. But it's a structural issue, and it's something that it's not only in colleges today, it's in workplace environments across this country that it's got to change, and dramatically. And I think social media has been a little bit of a light the candle to it, too. Yeah. I can say what I want. I got a social media page. So I can say what I want when I want. Okay? Yeah, you can. But do that somewhere else. You can't. And haven't we lost respect for one another in a lot of cases? Just feeling as though, hey, listen, I can say what I want when I want and do what I want. And that's got to dramatically change. But we have a couple of generations that now have grown up in that environment.
Yeah, that's right. It's a whole different mindset.
From your standpoint, you've heard it, haven't you? Okay,
oh, yeah.
Even in the media business that we're in, people criticizing women just because they're women, not because not their efforts or their talent. It's because they're a woman and they don't like it. My world's changing. Well, get used to it. Your world's changed forever.
I love it.
And it's true.
Yes.
But a lot of people don't want to accept it. That there are people that I grew up a certain age. Okay, I get it. Today, I work with more women than I work with men in the media world. And it's not even close. And the talent that I work with, for the most part, especially if I look at it from, say, 45 and under, is amazingly forwarded toward the women. Much more slanted than that. They work harder. They have a great work ethic. They got something to prove. Some of the males I work with, I can't put that on the resume for them. At all. Zip. And everybody's got personal issues, okay? And sometimes you kind of get caught in between because you're hearing it.
Right.
Now, on that part, you can't keep picking the same sort of guy that's going to give you issues. And sometimes a distraction. But today, the more talent especially in the sports media business, is much more so women than men. And I've said that. I wrote that 3 years ago. It's not even close. Not even close. It is what it is, but it's a structural issue with us. And I think it's an issue for us of lack of respect for many. Would you say that to your daughter?
Exactly.
Or your niece?
Exactly.
Or your mom or your sister? Would you say some of the things that I see said to some women, would you do that to them? The answer is no, you're not saying that. But yet we live in that society of, well, I got social media and I can say what I want. And I don't care if it's true or not. I say it and prove that I'm wrong. And just to spurt out. And I think there's a lot of jealousy, too, in this world.
Amen.
That part's there. That people jealous of maybe a job, a position, money, you name it. It's part of it. And also the other part, too, is how you handle success and how you handle money. And do you want to be flaunting that this is my life? I'm very careful about what I post online, and so my thing is I understand how I live and I enjoy it, and I live a certain lifestyle from a standpoint from money and everything else. But for some people, if they see that, they get upset. How come I'm not living like that?
Yeah.
And so, bang, you catch their anger that, how come I don't have that? And so that's a lot of that's a societal issue, what's happening at LSU. It's not a collegiate issue. It's a societal issue across the board. And will it get better? I wish I could say yes, but I think it'll get worse before it gets better, to be honest with you.
And that's the sad part, is that it'll take a lot more for it to get better. And Bernie, I know you've experienced a lot of what Mike was talking about a second ago. You can certainly attest to it.
Yeah, and fortunately not obviously to the level of these other people, in terms of, people just going off on you because you are a woman. But boy, I just love that you're being so, staunch about this, because you're right. There's jealousy, there's problems, these issues exist, and people do hide behind keyboards too.
Yeah, okay, so they're sitting at a keyboard in their living room or in their mom's garage or, at an apartment somewhere, and they just sort of go off, okay? And it's more the valves are clicking with them, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, they got to let loose that steam, and you just so happen to be in the line of fire for them. And so you see it. And I think there's always been that certain point where some people with power and the ability to change your life can hold some people hostage. Fortunately for me, that's never happened. But I have seen it with others. I have seen it with others that, those things happen, and you got to make a choice. And it's, I guess, since the beginning of time that's been in place. But I think we see it much more today, because everything now, something happens, pow. Somebody got a cell phone, somebody will talk to somebody. One thing leads to another thing, to another thing, to another thing. So I think it's more open about that. I think in years past, the same thing with domestic violence, I think, that wasn't something that was invented 5 years ago. I mean, that's been something that long been happening.
Yeah.
Long occurred. And yet, I think at one point, maybe people just sort of put up with it, but today, that's not the issue. So, and it's related to sports and kind of your background, how you grew up, how your mom and dad or your grandparents got along, or, whatever. I think that all sort of trickles into you. Mm-hmm. It really does. How you grew up. If somebody's got a huge ego and they're an egomaniac, that didn't happen overnight.
Right.
Okay? That's long been in them, and something triggers it off. And go back and talk to their mom and dad, and I can find the culprit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I can find it real quick, because I've been involved with that, and it's again, handling. I think we're more used to handling failure than used to handling success.
Yep.
Because we've had much more failure than success. That's 99% of people in this world,
including the New Orleans Saints.
And so I do believe that you almost sort of build up a little bit of, amnesia to it. But then that comes a trigger point for some people where they don't want to deal with it anymore, and so they lash out. And what's the easiest thing to lash out? I can go on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram and lash out. Now I've got an outlet that my valves can blow about certain things. And so it's, to getting back to the LSU deal, this was systematic, and especially in dealing with a head coach that grown men knew had done something wrong, and they covered it up.
And that's a huge problem, and now that's what the LSU Board of Supervisors and really the state legislature has to face now, and that soap opera will continue to develop over the coming months. As we wrap up here, Mike.
But let me say this, Ian. Has it affected LSU's recruiting in football?
No, seemingly no. And
not one bit.
And that's what I wanted to ask you about.
The train keeps rolling.
Yeah.
Right. It's amazing. And I'd asked this to Coach O, how is this all going to affect you? He said, Mike, from my standpoint, we just got to keep, we can't keep running. We got to keep in stride. in essence, none of this is just going to go away. So we got to keep just going. And, man, they've done a great job of putting the blinders and just keep going with this recruiting, which has been great in football. Despite everything that's happened with Will Wade, look what he's done recruiting basketball.
Yeah.
I mean, that's unbelievable. Now, the baseball part of it will be interesting because the one thing Paul has always done is recruited well. Now, some of those guys leave to go and, they're headed to the major leagues. But we all know the end is near. And there comes a point where you just can't do what you've been doing for a long time as well anymore. And the pressures get to you. And I think you're at that point at LSU today, baseball-wise, so you're going to have to make a move. Scott Woodward, and I told him this, I think it was early February of last year. I said, you didn't hire to give us the good stuff. You hired to make the fires. And he looked at me and he said, I got hired to be the firer. Because you knew eventually that, something was going to happen with Nicky. You knew eventually he's going to have to make that call on Paul Maneri. Eventually he's going to have to make that call on Will Wade. Dee Dee was a great gymnast coach. But, COVID, because her dad and my grandfather planted sugarcane, same place, in a similar area of the world, here on the Bayou and River Parish. So I've been knowing Dee Dee for a long time. And Dee Dee had always told me, Mike, I'm not going to overstay my welcome. When it's time, I'm going to know it. COVID hit, that was enough. Dee Dee that's the sign from God. I got to move on. I got to move on in life. And she did. So when you're talking about the probability that you having to replace a men's basketball coach, a women's basketball coach, the baseball coach, you already replaced the gymnast coach, you're going to have to make some tough decisions in the hierarchy, so to speak, of what's in football operations. You're going to have to do that. And you're going to have to make some moves there in the administration part of that, because there were people involved with that were involved with cover-up. So, man, I don't know what he's making, but I hope it's a pretty penny because, man, you got your plate full at this particular point.
He certainly does, and that's the soap opera that'll continue to drag on in Baton Rouge, both at LSU and at the state legislature, with how they handle all of this. But it's only a matter of time before the NCAA comes in with their own restrictions, but we'll cover that when we get there. Mike, we appreciate it, brother. Thank you for taking the time. We'll talk to you in September.
All righty. God bless. Thank y'all both.
Thank you. And
great guy.
Mike, as always, with a great conversation discussing everything about LSU. And Mike pulls no punches, and we heard that when he discussed the situation with women in sports media, and he's absolutely right. Even on a local level, we see it here where not just with the women in sports media, but women in all media here. You see a new face on TV, and what's the first thing that happens? They get a ton of emails asking, are they single, or asking things that are even worse. So it's not just an LSU problem. It's a problem we have in our culture, in our society, and we as men have to do a better job of not being jerks, to be quite frank about it. Thanks again to Mike Detillier for being with us, for talking to us for more than an hour on Monday and allowing us to share his thoughts with all of you. We hope to have Mike back in the fall on a weekly basis talking about the New Orleans Saints, about college football, and everything going on in the world of football, both professional and amateur. If you want to catch Mike Detillier, you can find him online, MikeDetillier.com. He's also on Twitter, at Mike Detillier. You can also find him on Facebook. Search Mike Detillier. He is there as well. Again, MikeDetillier.com, at Mike Detillier on Twitter, and at Mike Detillier on Facebook. And, of course, the Mike Detillier interviews brought to you by our friends at Café Lola, 1155 Coolidge Boulevard in the Oil Center, 235-4566. That's 235-4566. Café Lola, Lafayette.com. You can order online, you can order by phone, or you can just walk up, order there, carry out, eat in, doesn't matter. Café Lola has you taken care of. And special thanks to Kevin Landry, the folks at Café Lola. When we mentioned the Mike Detillier interview, they immediately said, how can we be part of it? And I'm happy we were able to make it work. You know, sometimes it takes acts of Congress forever and a day to make it happen. Mm-hmm. Within an hour and a half, they were on board with this. And I cannot thank Kevin and company at Café Lola enough, not only for the great service and the great food, but also helping us bring the Mike Detillier interview to the masses here. We need to take a quick commercial break. We handicap the Kentucky Derby right after this on News Talk 96.5 KPEL.